Right, our reading this morning is from Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 35, which you'll find on page 1048 if you've got one of the church Bibles. Large crowds were travelling with Jesus, and turning to them he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, 'This fellow began to build and was not able to finish.' Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able, with 10,000 men, to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms for peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure heap. It is thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear." Thanks be to God.
If you were here last week, where did we leave it? If you weren't here last week, maybe you've been on the website, and it's not 4 hours long. It's just about 30 minutes long. You may want to discover where we are with our teaching, because it's important that you listen to the first one before you hear this one. So, but for those of you who haven't been on the website or who weren't here last week, our title last week was Impossible Ethic and Useless Religion. And we left it to saying there's nothing we can do to get to God. Jesus came and said, actually, you've heard it was said, don't commit adultery, but I say to you, don't even look at someone with lustful eyes. Help. It was not good news. Jesus did not come to bring good news about our behavior. In fact, he came to bring bad news. You can't do it. And then he talked about religion and said, well, you know, the Pharisees, your righteousness has got to exceed all those who are really, really good, like the Pharisees who are the best. And he even said to them that, actually, woe to you, you hypocrites. You're useless. Because religion and doing all the sacrifices and trying to be good and then giving sacrifice and coming to synagogue, it's useless. It's not going to get you there. But the good news is that Jesus said, not a jot or a tittle will be taken from the law until it is all accomplished. And it was all accomplished on the cross. Everything was accomplished on the cross. The separation between man and God was brought together. Eden is restored. No longer do we have to try and be good because we're never good enough. No longer do we have to try and do religion because God has given us a relationship with him. That's the good news. And so we live in good news. We live as people who don't need to earn God's approval, that don't need to live up to anything. God loves us as we are. He accepts us as we are. He died on the cross for us as we are, and he rose again for us as we are. That's good news. And so we come to the context of this passage in Luke chapter 14, and you may like to, if you've got a Bible, then look that up, because we're looking at this in a little bit of detail today. If you haven't got it, the Bible's at the back, which you can go and get. Luke 14, so on page 10,048, and Graham has just read it to us. There was good news that Jesus was here. The people were saying, hey, this is a great rabbi. We love this rabbi who's walking around, and Jesus was getting lots of followers. And they were probably thinking, hey, let's find there's another miracle. Perhaps this rabbi is going to do another miracle. Let's follow him and find out and see. Let's ogle it. Let's see someone healed. That would be great, wouldn't it? Wow, this man has power and authority. And maybe he'll put another boot into the religious, because we don't like the religious people, the Pharisees. So they make us do all these things. Then he's saying nasty things about them. So hey, let's follow him and see what he's going to say. Or he's also got things to say about these Romans that are around us. Let's see what he's going to say about overthrowing them and bringing his kingdom, because that's what we want. So this was good news. So they were following him. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Wow, great. And turning to them, he said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Oh, not a very good thing to say if you want to influence people and get a following, is it? Jesus was thinning out his crowd. That's what he was doing. You see, it's good news that we have an impossible ethic and a useless religion. It's good news that Jesus died on the cross. It's good news that Jesus rose again for us, and I don't have to earn his approval. But I need to make a commitment. I need to make a commitment to him. We can't just walk around saying, oh, this is good news. And that's what Jesus is saying to his followers in the next, in that passage. He's saying, and it's what we've sung about. It's saying, first of all, something about supremacy. See, Jesus is talking in hyperbole, like any teacher will, to get you to think. And the family was important to the Jew, to the Roman, really important. It is to us. And then Jesus says, you've got to hate your mother and father and your brothers and sisters. And he's speaking in relative terms. What he's saying is, I need to be supreme. Jesus is saying, I am the supreme one. And relatively speaking, you need to hate everything else in your life and put me number one. You can't be my disciple unless you put me number one. Didn't the law also say that? Ten Commandments says that? God is a jealous God. You shall have no other gods but me. Jesus is saying the same thing. And then he says, and anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. I've been thinking about this too. Surrender. That's what carrying a cross is about. It's about surrendering. Surrendering to myself. Getting rid of number one, self-denial. That's what Jesus' call on our lives is today. It's what Jesus' call on the lives of the crowd were. Supremacy and surrender. And it's the same question to us. Are you willing to make him supreme and surrender to him? You need to make a decision. And you need to continually make a decision. Because of what God has done for us. And then I come to a problem with the next bit of the passage. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. So it talks about building a tower. And this man sits down and works it out. And then the person going to war, well, I better work it out. You see, then it all ought to think about, I've got to work it out. So if I start to apply this to Christianity or to faith, it seems to be saying that I need to count the cost. And that's true. I need to count the cost because it will mean that I'm different. I need to be different. And we're beginning a whole series on discipleship. I'm not doing all of them. But it's all about discipleship, about being, about following what it means to make him supreme and surrender. I talked last week about the stages of faith, which is belonging, believing, and behaving. We need to have done the believing bit. Make him say, yes, I come to you, Jesus. But then we need to work out our salvation. Paul talks about that. Work out your salvation in fear and trembling. It's the life of discipleship. It's about being different. It's behaving differently. And that's a cost. That's a cost to us. It'll be a cost, and we'll find this out as we go on. It will be a cost in how we spend our money, what we give away, and what we keep. It'll be a cost in the way we relate to others, the way we deal with conflict, the way that we forgive others. It will be a way that we need to come in the opposite spirit. When someone hates us, we come back in love. All these things that we're going to look at are all about living a different lifestyle because he's number one and I surrender. So, yes, in a sense, we need to count the cost. There will be a difference. But the problem I have with these two parables is that it seems to suggest in our consumer society with which we are, that we need to, well, let's tot it up, this thing about faith. Are there more pros and cons? Where's the profit and loss? Is it going to be a profit for me to give up all this thing? It's actually going to benefit me. And we start to have the consumer mentality. We start to say, well, I'm doing God a favor by following him. And that's what we start to think in this counting the cost. We tot it up. Well, and then when it gets too hard, we say, oh, well, it's not worth it then, is it? Or when things don't work out the way we want, when God doesn't answer our prayers or seems not to, we say, well, that's it then. I'm gone. I'm not willing to pay it's not working for me. The balance sheet isn't working. It's not in my favor anymore. So, right, that's it. And I think we need to be aware of that. Because I don't believe that is what Jesus is saying. In fact, there's a commentator called Oswald Campbell, who, as I scratch my head over this, who suggested, and I just throw this out there, that these three parables that come after this, we need to understand who the person is. Is it me counting up the costs? Suppose one of you. So who is the king going to war? Who is the man building the tower? And he suggests it's actually not about me. It's actually God is the subject of these parables. Let's see how this might work. It's not about salvation, because that's already dealt with. It's about discipleship. And God looks to those who have come to him, who are his resources. And he says, I want to build my tower. And I want to fight this war. Now, do I have the resources to do that? Does God have the resources to do that? And who are the resources? What are the resources? It's you and me. So God looks at us and says, I want to build a kingdom. I want to go to war, if you like. I need to defeat the enemy. I want to build a tower. But the only way I can do that is with the people who say they belong to me. The people who said, I'm supreme and I surrender. Who said that I'm supreme and I surrender to you, God. That's the first bit of the passage. And God says, can I do it? Can I do it with these people? I need to work it out. Because if I can't, well, I'm going to be shamed. Or if I can't, I'm going to be defeated. And God looks at us, his people, and he says, yes, I can. Yes, I can. he does. And he will continue doing it. The question is not about our salvation, but our discipleship. And the question that God is asking of you and me is, will we be the King's people? Will you and me be the King's people to defeat the enemy? Will we be the people in Clitheroe in the 21st century to build his kingdom here? Will we be the people who will go out to Kenya and Eldoret and Open Arms? And will we partner with them to build his kingdom there? Will we find opportunities to build his kingdom? Because that's what God is calling us to do. Will we be the people that he says that will be his to build the tower, to build his church here in this community? Will we work out our salvation with fear and trembling, working out of who we are? And God looks at us and says, have I got that? Have I got those people? And he's calling us to say, I'll be part of that. I'll be part of your tower building. I'll be part of your war fighting. Because the final parable is about salt. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure heap. And that's talking about those who aren't willing to be the disciples, or who have lost faith, or who have said, I've given up. And it's worse than useless. It's not even good manure. You know what manure is. And because I'm online, I'm not going to say anything. But it's useless. It's not even good for manure. It's not even good for the soil. It's rubbish. And so the question is to you and me, are we salty? Are we living a life of discipleship? Never to earn God's love or approval. Not to do that. We've done that. That's the impossible ethic. Never to gain salvation by our behavior or the way we pray or whatever. Because we tried that. That's called religion. And we know it doesn't work. No, we're not going to we don't have to earn God's love or approval. He already loves us and approves of us. We've already got salvation if we said yes to Jesus Christ. But he does call us to be a people, to be an army, to be a tower to the world around us, so that they may know, so that they may come, so that they may be part of the kingdom. And how do we do that? By making him supreme, and by surrendering, and by living the life of discipleship that he calls us to do, and that we're going to explore over the next 9 weeks. Let us remember, we can't earn it. It's already given. But in each of us, every day, we need to surrender and live a life of discipleship, because God is looking for a people. And he looks at us and says, yes, yes I can, and yes I will, because the gates of hell will not prevail against my church, because we, church, are the hope of the nations. That's our calling. God says, looks at us and says, I can, I will. Be my people. Let's stand, shall we?